They don't need a Half-Life 3. Keep working on making Steam the best service it can be. Keep working on your next VR project. They're doing a lot of good. They don't need Half-Life 3 on top of that.
The game needs to be a 12 out of 10. It cannot be any less than that. I just think it will be.
Based on what?
Guys, here's a lesson. Don't announce it. What are Valve doing right now?
They released Half-Life 3 as an 8 out of 10. A great game. Do you still think they should have released it?
I could always say, oh, I wish I hadn't taken that shit earlier because God, it hurt.
This is next level copium.
So Josh, Half-Life 3. Game has been anticipated since basically the sun was invented. I think that Valve's hands are tied. They have to release Half-Life 3 at some point. What do you think?
I disagree. I don't think Valve needs Half-Life 3 anymore. I feel like they've outgrown their franchises in terms of putting their name in the history books, right? So do they need a Half-Life 3? I don't actually think releasing a Half-Life 3 would do them any service for a few reasons. The first is, I feel like the hype behind Half-Life 3, it's almost outgrown the game series. It's almost like the legend. There are people hyped for Half-Life 3 that have never played a Half-Life game. And so when the hype has outgrown the series that much, I feel like from Valve's perspective, them releasing that game, it could never live up to expectations. And as a result, I feel like the argument of they need to release Half-Life 3 to continue their legend is kind of, I don't know, I just don't agree with that. I don't think they need it. And on top of that, when you look at the history of gaming, Valve will always, from here until, infinity probably, Valve will always have their name engraved on the pedestal, not only because of the games they release, which influenced many other games, but because they own one of the largest marketplaces. They are the vendor where we go for gaming. And so the legend of Valve will continue. They don't need Half-Life 3.
And all of that makes sense. However, I have to disagree with you. Whether they release Half-Life 3 or not, they will be remembered. But I do think it's not just about being remembered. I think it is about maintaining a legacy, truly, because they have not released a single-player game for so long. Yes, they're not necessarily known for their single-player games in 2026. No, absolutely not. Their hardware is fantastic. I mean, just today we saw the Steam machine embargoes lifted. We saw a lot of reviews. We'll talk about that a little bit later because it does get into my argument. Steam is by far and away the best gaming platform that you can buy. I mean, Steam OS is, there is nothing quite like it, right? So they're not known for their single-player games. But when they do it, there is nothing like it. It is like a Rockstar release because they are so secretive. The hype is astronomically high, but I think Valve is one of the only companies that can actually meet that hype level. Every time Valve has released a new game, it has introduced a new paradigm of PC gaming. Half-Life 1, storytelling, environmental, really just kind of invented by Valve and then popularized at the very least. Half-Life 2, physics engine. Long story short, I rambled for a bit there, but my point is they have to do it and they will succeed.
And that's where I just disagree. I feel like the success part is one part of your argument, but the have to do them is another part. So the success part, let's talk about this for a sec, because Half Life Alyx is a great game. It's a great game. It's probably the best VR game next to Boneworks, right? It's right up there. However, how many years ago was that released?
2020.
Back in 2020. It's been a long time. And when you compare that to the original Half-Life series being released, right? Part 1 and Part 2, it's been an even longer time. Do you think they still have the talent there to pull off great narratives like the original Half-Life games that will not just be on the same level, but will supersede them, will live up to a hype as big as we have for Half-Life 3? I'm not convinced they have the talent they're required to do that anymore, especially when you consider the unreasonable expectations from the gaming community for Half-Life 3. I don't think that's there. So that's one part. The other part about Valve needing Half-Life 3 for their legacy, that's where I just disagree. When you look at Valve as a company, many people that have never played Half-Life will interact with a Valve product regularly. That is their legacy in my mind. Great products that people love, that people interact with maybe not even knowing about the company behind it. And I think that's very significant. Let's be honest, the story would be great to conclude, but at this point, the legacy of Half-Life is the fact that Half-Life 3 was never made. That is kind of the legacy that lives on. And so I don't know if Half-Life 3 is necessary at all, to be honest.
I want to get to your first part of your arguments there, but I just want to address that point right at the end there, that the legacy of Half-Life is that Half-Life 3 was never released. I have to disagree with that. I just have to. The legacy for me of Half-Life is an unfinished story, because at the end of Half-Life 2 Episode 2, there was a cliffhanger, and it was never resolved until Half-Life Alyx. And even then, it's still unresolved. It is still completely unresolved. There is an open book for them to go in and explore this world that is so popular. People our age, all the way up to 50, 60-year-olds know of Half-Life. They may not know exactly what it is, but they know of the game because of how successful it was and what it did for not only a company. I mean, Valve would not exist as a company if it weren't for Half-Life. That is just a fact. And Steam, of course, yada yada. But it is a fact. If it weren't for Half-Life and Steam, they would not exist. Let's go back to your first set of arguments there. Will it live up to expectations? And I said yes. Here's why. Because the writers currently that wrote Half-Life Alyx had been trained by the original team of writers. And my understanding is, I could be wrong about this, but the original the Portal 2 writer, Chet Falisak, I think his name is, something like that. He actually returned to Valve. I don't know if he's still there or not, but some of the original legacy writers of Valve, the legendary ones that made Valve who they are, they returned to Valve for a little bit to my understanding, train current writers. And they may even still be there now. I'm not up to date on their staffing because it's a little bit more private, but I know that people got trained, and that is how Half-Life Alyx came to be, and that's how that story of episode 2 was retconned. It's really important that they do finish this story. We've waited a very, very long time for this. If not to the community, they are in debt to themselves. They should absolutely be releasing that. They've tied themselves in a knot here. They need to get this out. But also, we've just got new hardware. We've got the Steam frame coming out, which hasn't had its pricing announced yet, but we've seen the Steam machine, and we've got reviews.
I've watched them. That's right. I have. They're very mediocre. Not bad.
Not bad.
Clarify, not bad, but mediocre.
Now, I think part of that could have been helped by the announcement of a certain game like what they did, if I'm not mistaken, for the Valve Index. Now, my understanding is, according to all the leaks and whatever, the original plan was to announce the pricing of the Steam machine alongside Half-Life.
Your argument is that the Steam machine would have been better reviewed if it was announced
not better reviewed. Not better reviewed.
No,
not better reviewed. I think there'd be a lot more hype around a Valve product release, and a lot more attention put onto them. They're releasing this brand new game, and they've got this brand new game that everyone's been anticipating for years, whether it's Half-Life 3 or not. No one would know, but no, would not have improved its underlying performance failures. Let's put it like that. They misled consumers, I believe. I think that announcing this game would at the very least probably save a little bit of reputation.
I think it's entirely irrelevant, to be frank with you. I think it's entirely irrelevant because the Steam machine, if it was released alongside Half-Life 3, still would have been a mediocre product regardless. And as that's the case, yet sure, people would be hyped for Half-Life 3, and sure, maybe people focused more on Half-Life 3 than the Steam machine, but it wouldn't save that product. It wouldn't change anything.
It wouldn't save the
people
product.
Would be hyped if they... No, they'd be hyped and they would repair their PR, so to speak, tomorrow if they announced it. If you bring up a product from Valve that is mediocre and say, hey, if they release this game alongside it, wouldn't that have saved them PR? That's a horrible argument for you, Max, because surely giving evidence that they are not the same company they once were by releasing a mediocre product is not an argument in your favor. And so then if they went to go on and release Half-Life 3, and it was even a good game, not a great game, but just a good game, that would be a failure. And that series would no longer be remembered in the same way it is right now, because those first few chapters, the first couple of chapters, were so memorable. They were so evolutionary in gaming. And I just don't think Half-Life 3 can get to that same level. And if it can't even supersede that level, God, that's going to do serious harm to the series' reputation forever. The meme of Half-Life 3 never being made is why the series is so remembered. They are great games, but when you think about the audience for those games, if Half-Life 3 is known by so many other people that have never even played those games, then the legend is bigger than the series itself because Half-Life 3 was never made. And that is precisely why Valve should honestly consider never making it. Because if it comes out disappointing, that is going to piss people off a lot more than the series never being finished in the first place.
Josh, it sounds like you're being very risk-adverse there, saying that Valve risks permanently tarnishing the franchise is a little bit... It's quite pessimistic, I'd say, because I think you're not... I don't think you're putting enough faith in Valve. Yes, the Steam machine was not as good as it could have been, but that is purely, I believe, down to the price that they have been forced to put out.
Did the price force them to mislead customers on their marketing material?
No, but I think it would have been a little bit more understandable that you actually have to run FSR at maximum to get upscaled from 720p to 4K. Like, I think that would be slightly less offensive to people. Slightly. I still, even if it were that price, I would still say it's misleading, borderline lie. They should have underpromised and overdelivered.
Let's not pretend like mediocrity is limited to their hardware sector, all right? Let's talk about Artifact. How did Artifact do? How's
I was
Artifact
really hoping you wouldn't go
now?
there. Fuck it, it's dead. It's long gone.
It
You
is
can't even
long
download it.
dead. It's not just in the grave, it's beneath the graveyard.
Yeah, it's gone.
All right,
It's
it is
gone.
long gone.
Long gone.
Let's not pretend like Valve, whilst they've made many hits in recent history with their hardware and game sector, obviously Half Life Alyx, their VR headsets are very impressive. Let's not pretend like they haven't had some failures in there too. Surely after all these years, some people are retiring, some people are less involved. Like, I can't think that Half-Life 3 will have the same development team as the original games.
No, absolutely,
And
it can't.
as a result, I have to be concerned.
Because it doesn't have 100% of the same people as the original game?
Not just that, it doesn't have 100%. Like, what, a fraction? 10%? 5%? Like, that's when you start getting into the lower margins.
I actually don't think that's relevant to their ability to make games. I mean, I don't actually think in this specific circumstance, because of Valve's history, I really don't think it's relevant. Especially considering they released Half-Life Alyx a good 13 years after the previous Half-Life game. I'm pretty sure it was 2007. And that was a brilliant game by your own admission. So I don't see how that's relevant. And the story, yes, it was a 99% its own self-contained thing. It did everything it was supposed to. And I don't think saying that there's a possibility of people leaving is a tick against Half-Life 3. Nor should it affect how important it is to be released.
But hang on a sec. So Half-Life Alyx, you simultaneously admit that the game is a self-contained story, and you don't see any relation to that with being a successful game versus having to continue a franchise and give an ending, a resolution to a pre-made narrative. You don't see a difference there?
It was a VR-only title, which is a flaw, released in, I guess you could say, in celebration of VR, but also to mark the release of the Index, 100%. I don't think they could have ever continued the original story in full, a full game focused on Gordon Freeman or whoever, retelling what Episode 3 should have been in VR. That would have been disastrous for the company. So no, they made absolutely the right call there.
And I agree with that, but what I'm saying to you is, you used Half-Life Alyx as evidence that they can do a Half-Life 3 successfully. I'm saying, by your admission that it's a self-contained game that wasn't continuing the hyped up story conclusion, that's why it was able to be successful. That's why another team was able to do it. But when you take an adaptation and you say, look, we've got to end this pre-told story, now the stakes are way higher. Now there's way less freedom for the creative team that hadn't worked on the original Half-Life games. And when the stakes are that high, I'd be very concerned about their capacity to deliver for the fans an ending and a game that truly lives up to the hype that Half-Life 3 has.
Look, it seems like a lot of whataboutism. I'm just not sure. I don't think there is any reason to be concerned. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we actually have had zero word on whether the game is announced or not. We've only seen leaks. And so we don't know who's working on it. We have no idea. And I think being so concerned about the quality of it, respectfully, I think it's a bit of a skill issue.
You characterize my argument as whataboutism, and then you come on and make the most fairy tale argument. I mean, I'm sorry, no. I'm sorry, it's just...
A fairy tale argument? Go on, how?
It is.
How?
Because
How?
you're saying that I'm basing this off nothing, while simultaneously saying Valve needs it based off nothing.
You're right in saying I have zero evidence to say Half-Life 3 is going to be good, because it's not freaking out, but it's... at the end of the day, we need to go back to the original argument here and say, yeah, they need to release it. And you're concerned about whether they can do it or not, whether they can deliver something to the quality of the original titles. And I think they can.
Based on what?
Because they're still able to release decent things. I mean, Counter-Strike 2, yes, it absolutely has its flaws. Yes, absolutely. The beta release was the biggest bunch of fucking bullshit I have ever seen in the gaming industry, ever, hands down. I will say that till the day I die. But I have to say, with the exception of the skins year of 2025, which was pathetic and sad and miserable, between that, they have been working hard on the game, and it is significantly better than where it was on release. Surely there's still talent there at Valve to actually improve on that Half-Life series and release a fantastic title.
So that excuses them releasing Counter-Strike 2 in a god-awful state that the community hated for so long. And you don't think, okay, if they were to release Half-Life 3 in a state that would require patching, do you think that would be acceptable?
Absolutely
by
not.
The community
but I
standards?
also think they would not dare release Half-Life 3 in the state that Counter-Strike 2 was. I would hope that Valve learnt their lesson with Counter-Strike 2. The game is good. It is like a solid 7 to 8 out of 10 shooter. It is not a story-driven single-player game that their whole entire legacy rides upon. It is big shoes to fill, but I think they can do it, and they must do it.
Let's go through your examples real quick. First, you brought up the Steam Machine, and then admitted it was a mediocre product, right? And that they probably misled consumers with their marketing of that by overpromising. Second was Counter-Strike 2, which you also acknowledged released in a terrible state. The third example we brought up, Artifact, which you admitted was long dead. All right. Do you not see a commonality here? Do you not see a problem
No,
with saying,
I don't. Well,
look,
also,
they can achieve a level so far beyond any of their other games in terms of hype, right? They can achieve that. But while simultaneously saying, well, here's all their products, and here are 3 that were absolutely terrible at launch or are dead today.
That's a crazy argument. I cannot agree with that. I cannot agree with that. Oh no, they're failed. They're a failing company. I think that's a little bit crazy.
You know, they've been working on shooters. They've been working on games that aren't like Half-Life 3, so they'll be able to achieve that. You don't hear yourself and think, wait a minute, they've been working on games that are totally different than the game I want them to deliver at an 11 out of 10, because that's what it needs to be to deliver on the hype, right?
Does need to be that.
And you don't see a problem with that the only story game in their catalog they've recently released was how many years ago? Half-Life Alyx released.
6 years ago.
And it was a VR product that was entirely, like, let's be honest here, it wasn't a standalone product, it was using the Half-Life IP, and it was a standalone contained smaller story. You don't think that's evidence that Valve aren't capable of delivering on a Half-Life 3? I think it is. I think that's a problem.
I see where you're getting at. I absolutely 100% do. And maybe I have huffed far too much hopium. That is very, very possible. I mean, I'm significantly more excited for GTA 6 than you ever will be. But that I absolutely admit that maybe I'm a little overzealous on their thing. But I'm not conceding. That's not a concession. You have not gotten a concession.
Okay.
But I do think that they can do it because, as I said, these games are brilliant. These games that have come out. Yes, Counter-Strike tripped. Artifact was awful. They tried twice and it still sucked. Steam Machine, okay, I think it is actually a good product. Let's talk about this for a minute. I think the product itself is actually a good idea, and if it were released a year ago, praised on price today, it is mediocre. That's what I said earlier. Mediocre because the price is far too high.
So you agree? Like, that was a very roundabout way of saying, yes, Josh, I agree with you. It is a mediocre product.
I agree, but as one of our favorite people that we like to talk about, Lewis Rossman, he says there is no such thing as a bad product, there is a bad price. And I think that is a pure example of that. Linus himself said the hardware is actually decent. It's just a shame it's so expensive. It would have been $200 less. Yes, it's still more than a console in the US, but that is the exact market that they should be going after. It makes up those features that you actually get with the Steam Machine make up for it. And the hardware, it's tiny. It's miniature. You can put it anywhere, and it actually looks decent. It's not ridiculous. And it's a PC that you can actually do work on. It is a brilliant product, just marred by...
Wait, hang on. You're advertising the good parts of the product while simultaneously saying it's a mediocre product at the price point. Well, the Lewis Rossman quote you just brought up is actually... I love Lewis Rossman, but I disagree with him on that specifically universally, because there are plenty of games out there that you couldn't pay me to play, like Ride to Hell Retribution. I would need...
That's a throwback.
You would need to give me tens of thousands of dollars to play that game. And even then, I'd consider it, but for my own mental health, right? So the idea that there's always a price for a product, that's just not true. That's absolutely not true universally. And ironically, you're trying to amp up the good parts of the product, which are there. A mediocre product does not mean it's bad. It just means it's mediocre. And so you're saying, oh, well, it's got all these good features. I was like, well, yeah, but what about the fact they lied on their marketing? All right, that's anti-consumer inherently.
It's cringe.
For Half-Life 3, once again, the standard we're talking about it needing to come out at it can't be just good. It can't be just a 9 out of 10.
Agreed.
It needs to be outstanding.
Agreed,
and for
completely.
you to think, despite so much of the original team no longer being there, that they can achieve that when their lineage of past products is either good at a level of, you know, a VR game, self-contained story, or mediocre or bad launches or dead games, that's not a good lineage to base your argument that they can achieve the standard they need for Half-Life 3 to be at. It's just not. There's no evidence for it.
I cannot agree. Their lineage, yes, absolutely. Recently, there have been solid 5 to 6 out of 10s, and you're exactly right. The game needs to be a 12 out of 10. It cannot be any less than that. But I just think it will be. I don't think there is any world in which Valve say the game has gone gold. They've printed it on discs. They're ready to go out, and then they realize it's not perfect. They are not going to release it. I don't think Valve has it in them to stuff up such an important title in their history. Counter-Strike 2, they absolutely marred that game for 2-3 years, 100%. The community sentiment was poor, but I think they've brought that back up. I mean, you could argue that, yes, it's been around for a similar amount of time as Half-Life, but regardless, I think Half-Life is their baby and they will not release it poorly. And I cannot get behind that sentiment that the original team is not there. The team right now, whoever they are, have been trained by the ex-writers. Great, fantastic. But you've also got people who worked on the original there. Yeah, 5 to 10%. That's fine. I don't think it matters. It doesn't need to be the same people. 2004 was a long time ago. 2007 was a long time ago. It doesn't need to have the exact same people with the exact same brain makeup to produce a brilliant title. It's not needed.
The exact same way that I fanboy for Bethesda, despite their flaws as it is today, I feel like you're in the exact same position for Valve here. Because some of the things you just said were so nonsensical, it baffles me. Like, for example, Counter-Strike 2, a few words after saying they would not release, their flagship, their baby out there in a bad state, while simultaneously
is not their
saying... Baby. I'm sorry, if you've got millions of players, I'm sorry, yes, Max, it is one of your children. Yes.
Yeah, it is one of your children, but it's not their first child.
If they were willing to release Counter-Strike 2 in that state, I'm sorry, you can't sit here and tell me they wouldn't do the same for Half-Life 3. Especially, let's not even talk about other companies here, but actually, no, fuck it, I'm going to go into this.
Let's go into it.
Cyberpunk 2077. Mm-hmm. Before that game released, all right, you know who the darlings of the gaming industry were?
CD
Projekt Red. Yep. There wasn't a single soul out there saying, hold on, guys. Hold on, maybe Cyberpunk won't be as good as we think. Maybe the gameplay they've released is under very optimal conditions. Maybe the game won't have as many story paths. Maybe the game isn't quite what we think it's going to be. No one was saying that. And you know what happened? That game was pushed out too early. It was garbage and it was broken at launch because they pushed it out too early. If they can do that, why can't Valve? Why can't a company that's put out mediocrity in past years and sometimes bad in past years and sometimes dead in the form of Artifact in past years, why can't they also stoop to that level? I'm not convinced that they should ever release Half-Life 3 because I don't think they are capable of meeting that demand properly. And for you to sit here and tell me they are, based on no empirical factors, I'm sorry, Max, you're turning into, as I'm a Bethesda fanboy, you're turning into a Valve fanboy.
And I'll wear that badge with pride and honor. You're right, I am absolutely a Valve fanboy, and I am on my knees for them as a poor visual there, actually. It's really hard to sit here and defend them when Counter-Strike 2 was the most infuriating beta release of all time. I think they completely fucking botched that. It was pathetic, it was miserable, and they should be ashamed of how they released that beta. Valve still are. I think they are still the darlings of the gaming industry, more so than a couple of years ago. The Steam Deck, brilliant product. Came out at the right time, for the right price, for the right people. Also, look at SteamOS. Yes, that is different to a game, 100%, but it is good. It is a brilliant thing. They are capable of doing good things if they put the time and effort into it. Counter-Strike 2, they set themselves a summer release date. And you know what they did? They released it on the last day of summer, and they bloody well shouldn't have. Artifact, total failure. They misread the market. They thought there would be a market there. The common theme here is I think they are just miscalculating things. I don't think that makes them a bad company, and I don't think that makes them incapable of releasing an 11 out of 10. Now, I'll give you a chance to respond, but I want to know what would actually convince you for you to believe that Half-Life will meet the expectations of an 11 out of 10, or perhaps even exceed to a 12 out of 10. What would you say needs to happen?
No matter the marketing behind it, no matter what they say it can do, I'm not going to believe that the Half-Life 3 will meet that 11 out of 10 quota until it's out the door in my hands and I'm playing.
That's what I thought your response was.
The hype is so high. Like, I can't think... I'm sitting here.
GTA 6 would be its only comparable.
GTA 6 would be the only comparable one. And I've already made the argument that I think that game's overhyped. So if that game's overhyped in my mind... God, what the hell is Half-Life 3? And with respect, Rockstar's track record for gaming is a whole lot better than Valve's in recent times, alright? If you release Red Dead Redemption 2, a game that I personally think is overrated, but the wider gamer audience think is one of the greatest games of all time, then clearly, for their audience, they've got a good track record. With Valve, I'm sorry, you can't excuse Artifact's failure as them being like, oh, well, we thought there was market there and there wasn't. No, there was. Hearthstone was booming at that time. There was a mass market there. They just made a crap game. That's the main problem. I think it would break a whole lot of people's hearts if Half-Life 3 was finally finished in a state that is not good. That would kill a lot of people because a lot of people cherish Half-Life as a franchise, and I totally get it. It's amazing. There's no evidence to say Valve is capable of delivering an ending that would satisfy the masses. And as that's the case, they do not need Half-Life 3. They're doing great stuff elsewhere. You are right about that. There's different products they're making and in development that are really exciting, all right? They don't need a Half-Life 3. Keep doing that. Keep working on making Steam the best service it can be. Keep working on your next VR project that will overhaul the industry, you know? They're doing a lot of good. They don't need Half-Life 3 on top of that.
I mean, you said they should really be focusing on things like hardware. Now is not the time to be focusing on hardware. I think now is the time to be focusing on software. I mean, hardware is so expensive. The Steam machine is releasing $200 at least more than what it should have been originally. I don't think now's a good time for hardware, but I still accept your point. But I just don't think I'm holding on to that hope somewhere in there that they are sensible enough to, if Half-Life 3 right now in its current state, if those leaks are to be believed, there's still a lot of doubt in the community. I am a believer. Based on what I've seen, it makes sense from a technical perspective that if the game right now is bad and it's getting ready to be released, they would not release it. They would not dare. So the problem with Counter-Strike 2 is they should never have released it. Not an excuse. They should not have done what they did. I think it was absolutely piss poor that you had, I am going to say this publicly, you had people like Shroud who have come out publicly and said how much they hate Counter-Strike and all this, even though that made their bloody career, but they, that's neither here nor there.
Controversial.
And then you have other people like Onipixel who absolutely should have gotten beta access, and he had to frickin' beg them for it. Half Life Alyx was their last single player game they released. It was phenomenal. It's just it was for a VR. It was VR only. And yes, it's a self-contained story, but I don't think you could take points away from it because not only did it do a brilliant self-contained story with characters that are already established, it didn't disrespect them, it didn't do anything like that. It told a brand new story. I just don't think you can ever say that Valve are completely and utterly incapable. I just don't. I don't think that.
Don't get it confused here. I understand maybe where the confusion came from because I'm roasting Valve here, but
you're roasting me more, which is fair.
No, I don't hate Half-Life Alyx. I think it's good.
No, I know.
I think it's great.
No,
even,
I know.
right?
I know you don't hate it.
The point I'm trying to make is that Half-Life Alyx was far easier to achieve a good or great outcome because it was self-contained, because it was VR. It wasn't carrying the expectations that Half-Life 3 will be carrying. So as that's the case, I'm saying that's not evidence that they can achieve the level Half-Life 3 needs. In one of your arguments there, you talked about how Valve was giving keys to people like Shroud and not people like Onipixel, and that you thought was more deserving. As part of the community, you thought in the CS community, he was more deserving. Don't you see a problem there? They're failing to understand community sentiment within their own community. If that's the case, isn't that evidence that you should be more concerned about Half-Life 3? If they're failing at the base level here of who to give Steam access codes to in their community, I think that's a problem.
It is absolutely a problem. No getting around that. As that will never not make me angry. As a long-time Counter-Strike fan, I was fucking pissed off. Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on. 100% spot on. They misunderstood the community. 2 points there. That was 3 years ago. And also, it's a multiplayer game. It's completely different. No one is asking for XYZ from Half-Life 3. They're asking for a brilliant story. I'll come down to earth for a second. Before Half-Life Alyx, they'd released Artifact. That was shit. After that, they then did Counter-Strike 2. The launch of that was fucking terrible. And so you've, in a sea of bad things, the one Half-Life title they've released in all that time has been fantastic by your own admission.
If we were evaluating it as, is the game good? 100%, I'm in agreement with you. What I'm trying to say is you're using that as evidence they can achieve a Half-Life 3 at a desired community level. I'm saying the two are not compatible because yes, achieving a great VR story game, the subsect story of Half-Life, all right, at a great level is achievable. Achieving a Half-Life 3 at the level demanded by the community is a whole nother beast. What you're trying to say is, well, here's this side project they made for VR, which was great. And it's in the Half-Life universe. Therefore, they can achieve the massive, overwhelming burden of hype behind Half-Life 3. They can reach that level. And I'm saying, well, hang on a sec there, Max. Hold on. What about their other mainline games that were full products that either released crappy or are now dead? And you're like, well, no, it's okay because this Half-Life game they made that was a self-contained story for VR, that means they can reach that level. We should really exercise caution here and say, guys, the hype level of Half-Life 3 is so grand, should they really try to take on that task? Is it really to your benefit? And let me ask you a question here, Max. If Half-Life 3 came out and it was an 8 out of 10, a great game, 8 out of 10 is great. Brilliant. It's not good, it's great. If it came out as an 8 out of 10, would you still say it was worth them doing Half-Life 3?
You can say everything in hindsight with perfect accuracy. I don't. What's your point? What's your point there? What are you trying to get at?
I just want you to answer that. If it releases as
Why
an
do you
8
want
out of
me to
10,
answer
answer the question. Do you still think...
Fuck you know. What,
this is now a court. This is a court of law, damn it.
This is a kangaroo court.
Welcome me here. work with me here in this kangaroo
I'm
court
trying to.
of
I'm trying
my
to.
own making.
I want to know why you're
if
asking
it releases, because the reason I'm asking this is because if we meet in the middle, right? You
Sure.
say, look, they achieved a great game with Half Life Alyx, and I say, okay, they released Half Life 3 as an 8 out of 10, a great game. Do you still think they should have released it?
I don't know. You're a bastard. That's not a question I can answer because logically speaking, it doesn't actually. I don't think it makes sense because I could always say, "Oh, I wish I hadn't taken that shit earlier because God, it hurt." But I needed it out.
You can't do that. You can't do that, Max.
No,
you
I
used
can't.
Half-Life Alyx as evidence that they can make Half-Life 3 amazing, right?
Yeah.
They can reach that standard. I'm saying, okay, even if it matches the quality of Half-Life Alyx, it will still fall below your expectations. And I feel like you not giving that answer of yes told me everything.
No, because I'm not saying anything. Don't read into it, you bastard. That's not how that works. That's not how that works. Your Honor, objection. What the fuck? No, I don't. I think they need to take a shot at it. I think they absolutely need to, and I think they have to. Going back to my original argument, they have to take a shot. If you had to go purely based on their last fucking 10 years of performance, sure, you might say that Half-Life Alyx will average an 8 out of 10. Half-Life 3 will average an 8 out of 10. Whatever, sure. I just don't think that is going to happen. I don't see a world in which they release the most hyped video game of all time to mediocrity.
I feel like you're not getting over the hump of my point here. Let me just try to make it one more time. You said that as evidence that they can achieve the massive hype level of Half-Life 3 and meet those expectations, that Half-Life Alyx came out good. And I said, okay, let's just duplicate that. Let's say they achieve that again. They achieve that great game again. And then I posed to you, if it released as that, again, they reached that same level of Half-Life Alyx, which we know they're capable of doing according to you because they made that product, will you still think the product should be released? And you couldn't even say yes to that because I feel like you know subconsciously that it can't just be at Half-Life Alyx's level. It can't just be an 8 out of 10. It needs to be an 11. And thus far, there is zero evidence that Valve in its current state, as it is today, can achieve an 11 out of 10. That's just not in their playbook right now. And so why would they make a game that is inevitably going to disappoint people and make people upset? That is a bad idea. It's just a bad business strategy, to be honest with you. So I still say they don't need it. They don't need to do it. They don't need the heartbreak. All right. Do you understand the point I'm trying to make now? A little more?
No, I've always understood your point. Thank you for clarifying though. That's helpful. Just so we know we're on the same page. I get what you're saying. 100% I do. I just don't think they could release it. I think they would choose not to release it. They've done that twice already. There have been two fairly well documented examples of Half-Life projects being abandoned. Twice they've done it. And right now we are still seeing active leaks. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if they then say, nah, we need to throw this all away and start again. They could very well do that. And I think they are more likely to do that than release Half-Life 3 in a less than 11 out of 10 state. Josh, I just don't think they could ever do that. They would rather abandon it.
You just outlined a pattern here, all right? A pattern that I think clearly Valve understands internally that this game needs to be outstanding. And you've just outlined they've had to scrap narrative parts before, probably because it just wasn't coming together.
I don't think narrative,
Once again,
I think they've just scrapped the game.
Aren't you listening to yourself? The Half-Life development team went in a direction, it didn't work out. And now you're saying, oh, they're going in this direction, but they may also scrap this. And you're not thinking that's cause for concern that Half-Life 3, if it were to come out, wouldn't meet those lofty expectations?
No, because they've already abandoned it twice, as I said, and I think that they would abandon it again in a heartbeat if the final product is ready to be pressed to a disc and they're just not certain that it's going to be an 11 out of 10. I don't think that's going to happen.
That's the thing, Max, right? If your two options are, guys, maybe we shouldn't release it, which is the path I'm taking, and your thing, which is they need to release it, they need to, whether it's in 10 years or now, they need to release it, don't you understand that the argument you're making is an inevitable release that will disappoint?
Okay, Josh, let's go really wide on this question. Let's go into this, because I'm interested here. Would you say that it is worth getting into a relationship?
Overall, yes.
Okay, great. So, but Josh, there are so many downsides, so many downsides to a relationship. It can't be perfect. I know you want a perfect relationship, but it can't be perfect. One day your partner, they may not be around anymore. They may cause you heartbreak. God forbid they pass away. They could do that. So therefore, you should, Josh, don't go into a relationship. Don't do it.
Max,
Don't do it.
This is the worst. This might be the worst.
You said that twice now. Shut the hell up, bro.
Cooked up.
No,
seriously. This is like levels of copium that. I mean, granted,
you did the same thing for Bethesda. Suck my cock.
100%. No, I'm guilty. People will watch that and say, "Josh, you're a hypocrite," and 100% you're right. I'm a massive hypocrite.
When it comes to Bethesda, this man will always
right. But also, granted, you absolutely hammered me in that debate in the same way I'm hammering you right
me.
now. Because,
absolutely. 100%.
Look, at the end of the day, here's the thing, right? That analogy doesn't work for numerous reasons, but quite frankly, like, it's pointless to even get into because, like,
you won't engage with it. At the end of the day, Josh, why won't you engage with it? Come on,
all right, fine, I'll engage with it. Let's add another 10 minutes to this. All right, so Max, the reason that analogy doesn't work is because going into a relationship, right? You have certain expectations, and if they are not met, you will then leave said relationship, right? That's the basis.
Brilliant.
With Half-Life 3, those expectations aren't just, I want someone that, wants kids, I want someone that, is a loving partner. It's, this game has to be the best game of all time. This game has to be like, Jesus returning, all right? If those are the expectations you're entering a relationship, of course, inevitably, it's going to fail, no? And so the analogy you're making counters the point that Half-Life 3 should ever be released because it can never live up to those expectations. It can never meet the expectations of the consumer. Therefore, it shouldn't release because it will result in heartbreak. Do you not agree?
Well, I guess a definition of you can modify it slightly to make this a little bit more interesting. When you get into a relationship, you are looking for something that will hopefully last a lifetime, right? And when it doesn't, whatever reason that might be, you part ways. Sure, that's totally fine. Different examples. I understand that. But I do think there is something to be said. If you are so risk adverse that you aren't willing to put in the hours to make it the 12 out of 10 it needs to be, then you will never have that 12 out of 10. And I understand that's your argument. You're saying we don't need that. But why? Why? Like, not only would it be
Max,
financially
what are you even saying now? What are you?
No.
This is insane. This is the copium is off the charts.
I now understand how you felt. Now I understand
is so ridiculous. It's actually so absurd. The argument you're making. You're basically saying, yes, Josh, you should, even if you want, your partner needs to have a Lamborghini Hurricane and 20.
Look, if that's what you need from a fucking partner, sure.
No, but that's the argument you're making because you agree that Half-Life 3 needs to be an 11 out of 10. The 11 out of 10 is the Lamborghini Hurricane. It is them having billions of dollars. You agree the expectations for Half-Life 3 are up here, all right? They're massive, yeah? And yet, in your analogy, you're leaving that part out. You're saying, well, you should still take a risk. It's like, well, no, if you're a piece of garbage that wants to get in a relationship and you have expectations such as your partner being a billionaire that owns 10 yachts, then how do you not see the correlation here between the crazy person that thinks that they're looking for a partner that should have 10 yachts and be a billionaire isn't apt? It's the same fucking thing. And you made the analogy yourself. And look, at the end of the day, we should end this because, quite frankly, Max, I feel bad for you, and because I understand, I know how you feel right now. I honestly, it's not half-hearted sympathy because you put me in the same position with Bethesda. They are a company that I grew up with, all right? And I even said in that debate, little Josh looking back, playing Oblivion for the first time and being in awe, That's how you feel about Half-Life, and I totally get it. So, quite frankly, I think we should end this because it's unfair to you to be put in a position where this company that you love so much simply cannot reach the expectations behind the game you love and want to come out desperately.
The whole point of Half-Life is essentially a tech demo wrapped up in a fantastic game, right? One was, as I said, the environmental storytelling and single-player shooters being revolutionized. Two was its incredible lighting and physics engine that had not really been seen before in games. Watch the demos back from E3 2003, I think it was. People were umming and were in absolute awe by some barrels falling off a thing because it just didn't exist back then. It looked so good. Alyx was a brilliant example of VR games. The episodic titles were a step up in quality from Half-Life 2 and did something with stories that you hadn't really fully seen in the way that Half-Life did it. Half-Life is meant to be a tech demo, and right now we are on, the new frontier of technology. We haven't had something this groundbreaking for a very long time in terms of the raw compute power that we all have in our PCs nowadays. And with the advent of generative AI, I hope they don't go down that route. I really don't. But that is still a brilliant technology to show off in games how to do it properly. And if anyone can do it, it's Valve. The game will be, when it releases, it will be an 11 out of 10 because they will not release it any other than that. Valve have had their failures in their past years. I have admitted that. I will continue to admit that. They are not a perfect company. They never will be. But they aren't Bethesda. I'm afraid they aren't Bethesda.
Are they CD Projekt Red?
That remains to be seen. That's a really, really good question, Josh. Really good question. I don't know. We have to see.
And that's the problem with what you're saying, Max.
Right?
And I get it. You can't see outside those fan glasses of yours, which I get. But like CD Projekt Red was in the exact same position with Cyberpunk. Do you know how many years people waited for that game to come out from the original trailer?
Many.
Right? It was so long.
I think it was originally announced in 2012.
Long. I know.
Long time.
And that's why they got Keanu Reeves on board. The hype was over 9,000.
Oh, that's an ancient reference. I love it. Yeah.
I know, right? And you know what happened in that story? They released it. And the studio that made one of the greatest, my favorite game of all time, Witcher 3, was not able to meet those expectations. And yet you sit here and tell me that Valve can because they know about the expectations. Well, so did CD Projekt Red. And they had to spend ages making that game better. I'm concerned that you aren't fully wrapping your mind around that.
Counter-Strike 2 was a failure on release because they committed to a release date. And I think Cyberpunk fell into that same boat. They kept delaying it, and they felt they had to release it. And in order to do that, their scope was too wide. Guys, here's a lesson. Don't announce it. What are Valve doing right now? They're not announcing Half-Life 3. Boom. Can't come back from that one, can you?
Well, I can, because they didn't announce Cyberpunk for over a decade. And
then they announced a release date, and it took them a little while.
So you're saying Valve, they won't release a release date for the game ever.
What? No.
Because that's your argument. You're saying CD
they're
Projekt
waiting
Red
until they
announced
know
the game, and that was their fatal flaw.
It was their fatal flaw, and I'm saying Valve will not announce
and you're
Half-Life
saying
3 until it's ready. They're not going to do that.
They said the same thing with Max. Holy copium.
What?
They said the same thing about CD Projekt Red. CD Projekt Red waited a decade from the first trailer.
But clearly wasn't ready,
right?
was it? Clearly wasn't.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying to you. You're saying that CD Projekt Red, they failed because they announced the game. All right, and now you're saying,
they committed to a release date
it.
When the game was not ready.
So you're saying Valve will never commit to a release date for Half-Life 3 if it were to come out?
What? No, I'm saying that. What on
well, then
earth
what's your
are you
argument?
saying?
What are you saying? Max?
My whole argument was that CD Projekt Red locked themselves into a release date of whenever it was. Yeah. Okay. And the game clearly was not in a state to have that marketing push ready to go. Why was that?
But Max, go back, all right? Mm-hmm. They thought they were ready.
Well, clearly they
thought
weren't.
That's the whole point.
Clearly
but they weren't, right? So why can't the same thing happen to Valve?
Because CD Projekt Red knew they weren't ready because they kept delaying the game. They delayed it for a year and a half, maybe more.
Okay, so if Valve releases a release date, all right, just like CD Projekt Red,
sure.
All right, you don't think there's any chance that a delay may need to happen at some point? You don't think you think that's impossible? You think that's impossible?
Not impossible, no. But Half-Life Alyx was announced 6 months out.
Well, then what are you arguing?
Half-Life Alyx was announced 6 months before it was released, and there was 0 delays. Valve will not lock themselves into a release date. I hope that's what they learned.
You can't say that. You can't say that.
You can't say the game is going to release in an awful broken I
didn't say that. I never made that argument.
That's theatrics.
I said if we duplicate the performance from Half-Life Alyx to now, it would still not meet people's expectations. And you said, no, that they'll actually do even better for this one. And I said, based on what? And you gave me nothing.
CD Projekt Red, when they announced Cyberpunk 2077, they said that it's going to release on this date, right? And then they delayed it a subsequent year and a half, whatever it was. I don't remember. Irrelevant how long it was. They clearly knew the game was not ready. If they hadn't delayed it, then it would have been even worse. It would have been goodness knows what it would have been like. Horrible.
But when they announced the game, presumably they thought that was achievable. The release date was achievable. That's what
I don't know. I don't know if they
did.
I don't know if they did though.
No, they did. Why would they announce a release date?
That's my question. But
all those months out.
But you can't say that they thought they were ready when they then delayed it 6 months for however.
But no, what I'm saying is initially when they announced the release date, they probably thought, "Yep, that release date's achievable."
Could it have been?
As they got closer, they thought, "Nah, we have to delay it. We're not going to meet it."
Could it not have been investor pressure saying this game has been in development so long? Where is it? Could it not have been that?
Well, if it was based on investor pressure, why wouldn't they have to chuck it out the door on the initial release date then?
Chuck it out the door. What do you mean?
Like, you're saying, investor pressure is the reason why they announced the first release date. And I said, well, if that's the case, then surely they would have had to have released it on the first release date, no?
No, because if the
And
game
by that
is
logic, it was
terrible-
announced 10 years earlier. So what are you talking
exactly.
about?
I suspect that's probably why invested. No, I don't suspect because I don't know. But that is entirely a game theory there. But why else would they have announced it when they then delayed it another?
Because they thought they could achieve it.
Exactly.
And then as it got closer, they realized they couldn't. So when you say, how did they release CS2? Should that have been delayed,
Terrible.
Max? Okay, so if you admit that, okay, maybe in that instance, Valve should have delayed the game, all right? And then we're talking
No, I
about
think they should have done a closed beta.
will they announce...
I think they should have done a closed beta. That's what they should do. Where we had to sign an NDA to play it.
Should they have even released the game when CS2 was launched? Should they have done that?
No, they should have not built up all the hype.
So
forced
you
themselves.
admit that Valve is open to the same problems that CD Projekt Red had in the end, right?
Sorry,
and
do you
so
think
how can you sit here and tell me that they will not send a release date, and it's impossible that now we have to delay?
It's not impossible.
Your argument makes no sense.
It does make sense because they have had a chance to learn from that. They locked themselves into a release date because they built up so much hype far too early, and then suddenly they were like, "Oh, we need to put this out," right? And I hope that they've learned from that.
You said they've had a chance to learn from it, and then you, in the same sense, said, I hope they've learned from it.
I don't know.
Max,
I don't know
the copium is off the charts here. Like, this is next level
they have learned
copium.
from it. You know what? They have learned from it because the Steam machine...
By releasing a mediocre Steam machine.
But they waited. They waited, didn't they? Until they knew
they rated to release mediocrity. So that means, that's evidence, according to you, that's evidence that Half-Life 3 will meet expectations.
Oh my goodness. No, we could go on about this forever, and it's very funny.
Let's keep going. This is fun. Look, I felt sorry for you until you said that absolute insanity of, CD Projekt Red made a mistake of announcing the game. It's like, yeah, so will Valve. Valve will have to announce the game.
Announcing the release date, you donut.
They released CS2 too early, right?
So, you could argue
by your own logic, there is a risk that they could do the same thing with another product.
And my whole argument, yes, there is always a risk, but my whole argument is, do you think CD Projekt Red will do that for The Witcher 4?
I don't know. I still don't trust them. I haven't fully forgiven them for Cyberpunk 2077.
And I'm in the same boat as well, but I'm saying logic dictates a company, and they actually have less pressure. They don't have investor pressure like CD Projekt Red might have had. So my logic is they've already made that is one part of their mistake. I think that was their fatal mistake, but you could probably dumb it down and say that was one part of the mistake of Cyberpunk. They announced a release date. They committed to this when they should not have done that yet. And by delaying it, they admitted as such. And I'm saying I don't think CD Projekt Red would do that again. I don't think they will subject themselves to whatever the hell was going on there. And I think that Valve are in the exact same boat after Counter-Strike 2. They committed to something they should not have. They released this game to what felt like the public, but it was so unfair that the sentiment was already negative by the time the game came out. And so when it came out in a less than perfect state, people hated it. People loathed it because they built up this expectation and it didn't meet it. It didn't meet it. And you're exactly right. The exact same thing could happen with Half-Life. You're spot on. 100 billion, trillion, squintillion %.
So what are we arguing about then?
I don't.
We agree. You're saying I hope in one breath, and the next breath saying they will. They will release it 11 out of 10 because they know the stakes.
Yes,
you don't
they will
see
release
an incompatibility
here. Absolutely will release an 11 out of 10. And I'm saying I hope they learn and don't announce. These are completely separate concepts, completely different topics.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
It's not, though.
Yes, it is.
I respect your passion for wanting Half-Life 3. I mean, I do respect that. But in the same vein that I huff insane levels of copium for Bethesda, you are on the fanboy side here of Valve. As always, we'll let the audience decide. Thank you very much, lovely viewer, for watching
all the way
an hour and a half of this drivel.
That's exactly what it is.
Person watching this, right? You've watched over an hour of this. What do you think? Let us know below. And thank you very much.
Thank you for watching, but surely you have something better to do than watch an hour and a half of us arguing about Half-Life 3.
No, Max, don't tell them that. Otherwise they'll stop.
No, thank you very much. Very cool.